What's good? This is Marcus dafingaz back with another video. And in this video, we're going to be talking all about MIDI. What is MIDI? It's not going to be an overview of everything about MIDI, but just my understanding how I use MIDI in my productions. So first, before we get into all of that, let's talk about my free gear guide I want to give to you for free. It is my home recording studio gear guide. It is really not low, but budget friendly, budget conscious friendly gear that you should look into for your setup. We're talking microphones. I believe I have microphones, audio interfaces, headphones. What I don't have in there is if you are considering an audio interface and you want to use MIDI, just make sure if you want to use MIDI with your audio interface, that your audio interface has MIDI capabilities enabled on it. So we're going to talk about MIDI, but go there, dafingaz.com/gear guide. That is dafingaz.com/gear guide. I'm going to give that to you for free, my gear guide on budget stuff that you should look into to build out your home studio. So let's get into it. What is MIDI? I believe it stands for music or musical instrument digital interface. It is a protocol that was established back in the 80s, I think, and it was a way for electronic equipment, music equipment, and DJ equipment to communicate with each other. It is only data. So MIDI only transfers data. It does not transfer any audio, but it's a bunch of zeros and ones. It's a protocol that has stood the test of time since the 80s, so it's still surviving today, and I use it. If you are familiar with MIDI, it allows you to connect, like, let's say, two keyboards or a keyboard to some DJ equipment. You can use MIDI to power lights. It basically syncs all this stuff up. You can use it to trigger sounds in different sound modules. I've used it in the past for different sound modules, such as actually, I should go get it. I have it right out there in the hall. But a sound module such as a motif, module rack, and different keyboards where you can just plug your MIDI up to it, and you can play sounds on one keyboard and still trigger different sounds on another system, a module, or another keyboard. Nowadays, I haven't used a MIDI cable in probably 4 or 5 years because I use Bluetooth over MIDI, which is very, very low latency. I can't notice it. It's very imperceptible latency where you can play a note and it almost transfers immediately over. So I'm going to show you how I use that nowadays, but definitely do some MIDI research because I'm explaining it terribly, but this is how I use it nowadays. I have this device and I have to unplug it from my keyboard. It is called the Yamaha MD-BT01. Let me see if you can see this. This is the Yamaha MD-BT01. I will include a link either in the description of this video on YouTube where you can access it. It will be an affiliate link. We can get it from Amazon. It's under $50, I believe. This has been the cheat code. Whenever I travel to studios, when I'm doing work outside of the house, and even at home, I probably need to get another one for travel, and then I can leave one at home. But this is what I'm taking because all I can do is go to a studio and say, hey, if you have a MIDI keyboard on site, then I can just bring this. I can plug up my laptop or even my iPad, and I can bring up whatever sounds I want to use just by using this thing. So if they have a keyboard, what you can do is plug this in. So usually you have the arrows on this thing. Let me see if you can see the arrows. And this tells you where to plug it in. So this is going to go into the MIDI in, and this is going to go into the MIDI out of the keyboard. What is MIDI in and MIDI out? MIDI in is basically if you have input coming in from another sound module, another system. It's very, very convoluted. Not convoluted, but it's a concept you have to sort of wrap your head around. I'm very rarely using the MIDI in because usually I'm just going out of the keyboard and into like the computer or something. So, but you do it for this device, you have to plug both in for it to be powered. It is powered by MIDI, so you don't have to have a power plug or anything. But the MD-BT01 is a very, very, very powerful cheat code. I'm going to plug it up to my laptop or my keyboard here. Make sure I plug it up the right way. So that's plugged in there. You probably can't see it because it's hidden behind the trenches in the cable there. But I plugged that into the keyboard. This is how I use it. I'm going to go to the computer now, and I'm going to show you how I set it up in Apple. I don't know the exact setup for Windows, but definitely look that up if you decide to go with it. For Apple, all you have to do is go to Command Spacebar. That's how I search for it, and go to Audio MIDI Setup. It automatically opens up. Usually it opens up to this page here. I already had it set to open up to the Bluetooth page. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff. What you're looking for here is this Bluetooth icon. You want to click that, and it should detect your Yamaha MD-BT01 once it's powered on. Once it's powered on like that, if you have it connected to a keyboard like this, you hit connect, and it will connect, and you can now use your keyboard to control Logic. If you're using something like Ableton or Pro Tools, just make sure you know how to set up the MIDI with that system, but you have to set it up for your overall computer system, and then you can set it up in your DAW. With Logic Pro, as soon as I set it up with the computer system here on Mac, it automatically syncs, so I can play this, and it starts to detect the notes and things that I'm playing. This is like a drum sound. If I have piano, I can play chords and things, and it'll come through with very little latency, very imperceptible latency. So I'm going to show you exactly what do these MIDI ports look like. I have this is just a Motu M2 interface. I believe you can see here on the back here. You'll see these two MIDI things. One says, I don't know if you can see the words there. One is MIDI in, one is MIDI out. So that's where you would plug those cable. Those arrows tell you exactly where to plug that Yamaha MD-BT01 into, whether it's a device like this or keyboard. Mainly, I'm using it for keyboards because that's what I'm using to trigger sounds and things in my DAW. So this is basically just a controller. I'm not using the sounds out of the keyboard. I'm just using this to control the sounds that are in Logic Pro. Similar to the iPad, I won't show the whole iPad setup, but there's Bluetooth settings depending on the app you're using on the iPad, where you can plug up the MIDI to a keyboard, and then you can go to the settings in that app on the iPad and set up the MD-BT01 on that app on the iPad. So that's how I'm using it. I can also now, with that set up like that, I can go to different automation things. I can use the knobs and faders on the keyboard and assign them to different automation things on the computer here. Let's open up a plugin where this would be very useful for, such as an organ. Shameless plug, I just released my second sample pack called Church Organs. But let's pull up one of these organ plugins. Let's see if we pull up this one here. So for example, with this one here, I can use this knob here to adjust some of those sliders for the organ. I have a volume foot pedal here. That'll be a whole nother video that I can use to control the volume of the organ, or I can trigger it. I can say learn automation, and I can learn automation for those plugins. So there's different ways. Just really know how you can, once you have it set up, how you can automate your plugins with different knobs and faders you have using MIDI or MIDI over Bluetooth, MIDI over wireless. There are some Bluetooth MIDI enabled devices out but that don't even require the dongle now. So it gets really it's really interesting. It's really a great time to be living and being a music creator. This has been a terrible overview of MIDI, but this is how I sort of use it. So really quick, just to go over that setup. If you go to Audio MIDI Setup on the Mac, once you have that cable, that Yamaha MD-BT01, there are others. There is like I think Widy, W-I-D-Y has one, but I use the Yamaha. I'm a huge Yamaha fan. I have the Yamaha motif. I have Yamaha monitors. But that's the first one I've been using for years. No problems at all. Travel with it, like I said. Once you have that plugged into a keyboard, plugged in correctly, you see that it's powered on. It has like a little red light that tells you that it's getting power. Go to your audio MIDI settings on a Mac if you're using a Mac. Click the configure Bluetooth option here, and then make sure that MD-BT01 is connected. And then if you want to connect it to another device, you do have to disconnect it from this device, or you can just turn your device off and turn it back on and connect it to the other device or other laptop or iPad or iPhone, whatever the case is. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. Again, check out the home studio gear guide, dafingaz.com/gear guide, to look at some budget-friendly gear, including interfaces, microphones, headphones, things like that, that you can look into for your studio setup. That is a free guide I'm going to send to you for free if you check it out. I'll include a link in the description. If you have any questions about MIDI, I'll see if I can answer them. Shoot me a message and let me know. Be safe and be well, everyone. All right, peace.